Hi, my name is Andrew Wainwright. I'm the founder of Air Healthcare Solutions in St. Paul, Minnesota, and we specialize in behavioral healthcare solutions. Let me redo that.
That's fine. Start over.
Yep.
Whenever
We're going to say, what do I want to say? Um, Hi, my name is Andrew Wainwright.
let's start over just for me. I moved my chair. It was me.
Okay. Hi, I'm Andrew Wainwright. I'm the founder of Air Healthcare Solutions in St. Paul, Minnesota, and our specialty is disease management for behavioral health populations.
Really good.
That's perfect.
So how do we get into the disease of addiction? How do we get in? Where do you want to go from here?
So I'm guessing that the question you want to ask is sort of what do people not know?
Yeah, I want to talk about the continuum of care, starting from the intervention. What happens? You know what I mean?
All right, so let's talk about the continuum of care for a minute. Most people that I talk to, and this is 20 years in this business because I've really only ever had one job, and that's been working with families that are struggling with addiction in one form or another. And in a larger context, behavioral health. So when I say behavioral health, what I mean is alcoholism, addiction, eating disorders, and mental illness. But I think when most people talk about this issue, they're mostly focused on alcoholism and addiction. So we would call that substance use disorder. So in the newest context, whether you're talking about alcoholism, we're smoking pot, we're drinking, we would call that SUD, substance use disorder. So I think when most people interface with the system, it's when there's a crisis. So something terrible has happened. Someone fell asleep in the soup at dinner. There was a scene at Thanksgiving. There was an arrest. There was a DWI. And then all of a sudden there's this immediate need brought on by the crisis to fix it. So in popular culture today, the way we understand fixing alcoholism or addiction is we send people to treatment. That seems to be the easy, immediate solution. So everyone calls and says, my name's so-and-so, this is the emergency, this is what just happened, and we need to get my son to treatment. I'm like, okay, I understand that that's what you want to have happen, that you think that that's the appropriate solution for the problem that you have. So from where I sit, and my understanding of the continuum of care, and when I say the continuum of care, what I mean is how we get well, how we proceed towards remission from this illness. So when you call me, I hear that you're struggling and you're in crisis and you want to get this fixed immediately and you want to get your son to treatment. You think, if I do this, if I move my son from this hospital to this treatment center, he will effectively get well. What I know is that if you do that, he has a 25% chance of recovering, of effectively attaining remission, of, we'll call it staying sober for a year post-discharge, which is an easy metric for folks to understand. So that's really when they think, oh, my son's been drinking a lot, he got kicked out of college, this happened, I want you to fix him. When people say they want me to fix their son, what they mean is, I want my son to grow up, I want him to be happy, I want him to be healthy, I want him to get married, I want him to have grandkids that I can play with, I want him to have a high quality life. The way you get from here to there isn't necessarily just going to treatment, but that's what people believe, right? They think if I can just get my son from here to this treatment center, everything will be well. So the reality is that, is that there's X amount of money, right? There's always a finite amount of money, and there's an amount of time it takes to recover. So if we send someone to treatment and I send you away for 30 days, like I said, you have a 25% chance of staying well a year post-discharge. What I want is I want your son to get well right away. I don't want him to have to go through this again. I don't want the family to have to go through this again. So if you're asking me for my input about how should we access the continuum of care, what's the best way to get someone sober? How do I get my kid to be in a place 5 years from now where we're a happy, healthy family again? So if you're asking me that, and that's what folks do, I'd say here's what we're going to do. We're going to get your son assessed, detoxed, and stabilized. That's the first thing. And really, that's all that happens in primary inpatient residential treatment. So people think that treatment's the way to go, that if we send someone there that they're going to get fixed. All that's really going to happen is they're going to get assessed, detoxed, and stabilized. The real magic for recovery, and this is the part that's not out there, that popular culture doesn't understand, that the healthcare system to a large extent doesn't understand. And when I say they don't understand, what I mean is it's not codified and they don't pay for it. So when you call up, your insurance and you say, I want these kinds of services, they'll say, this is what we provide. So you utilize the services that they're willing to pay for. Today, the services that the healthcare system pays for are not necessarily the ones that will help you achieve your goal, which is to get your son well. which is to achieve remission from substance use disorder. So when folks come to me, I say, well, let's do this. We need to get them assessed, detoxed, and stabilized. Let's do that. And then we need to look a year out, because really what we know, what the science tells us, is that it takes 12 months for all of the levels in the brain to reset, to produce their own serotonin, to chemically be at the levels they were before we started abusing chemicals. So if it takes a whole year for the brain to reset, we got to give it time enough and the body time enough to recover. The problem is that folks will go to detox, they'll get out 48, 72 hours later, and they say they feel much better. They do feel much better, but their chances of long-term abstinence, of being in recovery, are very, very slim. So that's what popular culture doesn't know, is that it takes a long time to recover. So if you call me and you say, I want to get my son well, I translate. You tell me, I want to get my son into treatment. I need to have it happen right away because this is a crisis. And I say, I hear what you're saying and I hear what you want. I'm going to tell you what you need. What you need to affect the goal that you want, which is to get your son well, is you need to get him assessed, detox, stabilized, and then we need to put together a continuing care plan that's a year out. So we need to access the continuum of care with whatever services we can afford for a year. So if I'm writing the discharge plan, right, if we're getting out of the hospital, I'd say, let's go get him. If we're going to go to inpatient treatment, great. I have no problems with residential treatment. I think it's fabulous. I just don't think it's the one-stop shop. I don't think you get all your problems fixed there. So if I'm writing the world's greatest continuing care plan, we're going to get folks assessed, detoxed, and stabilized at primary residential treatment. And then we're going to move on from there, and we're going to case manage them for a year post-discharge, and we're going to get them into a level of care where they can get their needs met for most of that time. So if I got to write it, I put somebody into sober living for the next 11 months. So if I'm going to say, let's do this for your son for the next 12 months, we're going to spend a month in residential treatment, we're going to spend 11 months in sober living, and for those 11 months, we're also going to case manage them. And when I say case management and why that's important is, it's a long-term proven healthcare modality to both improve outcomes and reduce costs. So it services both ends of the spectrum. It helps people get wrong English but right speaking. It helps people get more better. It does so cost effectively, and it includes the family, which is the most important piece. So when we're talking about sober living, the biggest challenge is that it's not codified in the payment system. So the Center for Medicaid and Medicare Services puts together most of the codes today. They write the codes for what the healthcare system will pay for, so it moves over to the private side. So if you have, it doesn't matter, whatever kind of insurance that you have, the card in your wallet, you'll say, what can I get for my son? And they'll say, you can get this, this, and this. Today, there isn't a code for sober living, right? That level of care isn't paid for. 20 years ago, we used to have halfway houses, and that was a big thing for the 30 years that preceded that, and a lot of times that was paid for, that was codified, and there was a billable code for halfway housing because it was a clinical level of care. As managed care moved forward and we began to try and manage care, basically meaning that we're trying to contain costs. Part of the ways that we contain costs is that we limited lengths of stay, and we stopped paying for things that didn't have proven outcomes. So a lot of times if it wasn't a clinical level of care, they wouldn't reimburse for it. Sober living fits that niche exactly. The problem, however, here is that sober living is the most efficacious tool that we have in the continuum of care today. And the heartbreaker is that the healthcare system hasn't caught up yet to find a way to pay for it. But in terms of, if somebody comes to me and says, we have this budget, we have X amount of dollars to spend to get our son sober, and we're hopefully going to utilize some of the things that are covered under their insurance plan, but if they either don't have insurance or they need to private pay, primary inpatient residential care is expensive. So let's say, we'll just pick a number, let's say it costs $30,000. So let's just pick a number. Let's just say it costs $30,000 for a 1-month inpatient residential stay for chemical dependency as a baseline. So that means that parents are asked to write a check if they're doing it out of network or private pay for $30,000. That's a lot of money, right? It's a lot of money for anybody. It's especially, if you think about it in terms of a car, if you went out and bought a car today, and the guy who sold you the car said, there's a 1 in 4 chance on day 31 that this car will start, but it's going to cost you $30,000 today. I mean, when we think about it that way, that's not how we buy cars. I don't think anybody would buy a $30,000 car that had a 1 in 4 chance of starting a month from now. But effectively, when we purchase residential treatment, that's what you get. So we all know that the outcomes for that standalone aren't great. You're not going to hear that from the residential treatment folks, but those are the actual, that's what the data tells us. So what we want to do is we want to take the amount of money we have and we want to spend it in the most efficacious way over the longest period of time to produce the best results. So we're going to go back to what I would do. So let's go back to the example of what I would do. The father comes to me with X amount of money. He needs to private pay for his son. And if the budget's $30,000, he could say, I need to go to this treatment center. I heard they have great things happening there, that people get well there. I'm going to say that that's true, but I don't want to spend your entire budget on that. I think it's important that we can use a part of the money to get your son detox, assessed, and stabilized. So we'll do that at the local hospital for 3 to 5 days. And then either when the benefit runs out or if we're private paying, it's going to cost us, let's say, $5,000. We're going to take the rest of that money and we're going to spread it out across the rest of that year. We're going to try and buy him the longest period of time we can for his body and his mind to recover. So if I'm spending money inside of the system today, I'm going to spend my money on sober living. Because as I said before, out of all the tools available to me in the healthcare continuum today, hands down, sober living is the most cost-effective, efficacious tool that I have, that I can put in use, that absolutely, positively generates the best long-term outcomes. There's no doubt about that from the inside looking out. The challenge is the healthcare system hasn't yet done a 10,000 person pilot over 5 years to do long-term outcome studies. And it's a longer discussion about why they haven't and what that would look like. But today, when we talk about what works, and if people are asking me about what works, and as I said, I've been writing continuing care plans for 20 years and working with, I think we're up to over 30,000 families that have moved through the Air Care system. That's what works. So if we're talking about chemical dependency, here's what I would do. I get folks detoxed, I get them assessed, I get them stabilized, I send them to sober living for as long as I could, and I'd get them into some form of care management so that the family could be involved in this. It's a family illness. And when we isolate people and we ask them to recover in silos, so effectively, and there's a reason why residential drug and alcohol treatment is siloed off, and there's a reason why we give people some quiet time to recover. But maybe even more important than that is that once they're settled and they're stable, the really key piece here is about moving them back into community, about reintegrating them to life, because there's so much stigma and shame associated with having this particular illness. And there's so much stigma culturally that comes with recovering from this illness that overcoming that is a process. It doesn't happen in 10 days. It doesn't happen in 28 days. And the more tools you can give individuals to repatriate, to join a community, to meet other people that are doing the same things they are, to give them the opportunity to recover amidst fellowship and support over the longest period of time, that's the single most important factor to generate great long-term outcomes.
It was all really good.
That was a mouthful.
That was awesome.
So I just kept going because I figured you guys could
it's fine.
cut.
It's fine. There was plenty of bites that I can get out of that. Bryce, what are we missing?
I don't know. I didn't even know that was on that.
That was all great information. I can take tons of bits out of that.
If I cross my legs, does it look funny or is that all right?
Can't
I-
tell.
I'm-
See it.
okay.
Make sure your hair is like.
Yeah, sorry, I was
don't
trying
want
to
see it later.
No, you're fine.
redo when the hair was falling, I thought I'd just pause and start over for you guys.
It's perfect. It's
Okay.
absolutely perfect.
What do you feel like you forgot?
Let me pause for a second.
Let's go ahead and stop right there, Josh.
Here's what usually happens when families call. The mom usually calls and says, we have a crisis. Our son just got kicked out of college. He was growing pot in his room. We didn't know what was going on. It's a scandal. He had to spend the night in jail. Everyone's upset, and we need a solution. We need it quick. What the mom wants is she wants effectively for us to wave a magic wand and make her kid better in a really short amount of time, and then return him to college really quickly and pretend as if nothing actually happened. They want as little time out of life as possible because they have an agenda, and their agenda has to do with what the neighbors might think, whether or not I tell the rest of the family, how's this going to affect the rest of his life. Their agenda isn't necessarily what are the right tools to put in place to help my son today get well. And families are wonderful, right? We live and we recover inside of family systems. Families are also crippled with their own expectations, their own fears, and their own internal agendas. And a lot of times that gets in the way of when the family's calling me helping their son or daughter. So it's incumbent upon me, we call it talking truth to power. I have to tell mom, I have to say, I hear what you're saying. I get what you want. I get why you're afraid. You don't want your son to be bipolar. You don't want him to be crazy. You don't want him to be schizophrenic. You don't want him to be a heroin addict. You don't want him to be a pot. Whatever the language is, she's afraid is going to get hung around her son's neck. She's terrified of that. She's terrified he's not going to get an education and that all these awful things are going to happen because that's on some level been popularized by popular culture. That's what the media tells us. So we've seen 100 films about awful things that happen in the spiral of addiction, and she doesn't want that to happen to her son. She also is afraid to actually buy into recovery.
So let's hold on. There was something outside that I heard a bunch of noise. Start over with that sentence right there.
Parents are also, to a large extent, unwilling to buy into long-term recovery. They recognize that this is a crisis, but they oftentimes make a lot of excuses. This is a one-time thing. I think his roommate got him into this kind of trouble. My son isn't like those other kids. I heard that if he goes to treatment that things will get worse because he'll learn things there he didn't know already. I don't want him to have to be one of those people in church basements with old guys smoking cigarettes in AA. I heard AA is a cult. I don't want my son to be victimized and burdened with having to have a diagnosis for the rest of his life. Everyone's always worried about what's going to happen tomorrow and tomorrow and tomorrow. And my point is always like, listen, your kid's sick today. We got to live in today, right? Your kid's in the hospital, right? Something as serious has happened. And you can believe me or you can not believe me, but what I'll say to the mom is some things are true whether you believe them or not. And your kid is sick and he does need some help. And here's what help actually looks like. And I'll tell her. We're going to get your son detoxed, assessed, diagnosed. We're going to go along with whatever the diagnosis is. We're not going to refute it because you looked up on WebMD and he doesn't have this or that or that. These are real professionals in real white coats that know what they're doing. And their goal isn't to label your son because they want bad things to happen to him. Their goal is to get him the best medical care possible. They want him to get well. That's why they became doctors. That's why they're in the behavioral health care field. So we're going to buy into whatever the diagnosis is, and then we're going to treat it. And we're going to really treat it. We're not going to spot treat it. We're not going to clean this up and rush him back to school. So when I tell you, I think that we should take a year off. I think that it's great that he's going to leave school for the semester. We are going to talk to the dean. We're going to get him into primary care. We're going to send him to sober living for a year. And we're going to let him get back on his feet and pull himself together, because when he has a year of constant sobriety that he built up in a sober house, away from his old friends, away from his family, and he's put together a new plan, then I think it's time for us to talk about reintegrating to school. But parents, they have a fast track, they have a different agenda. So my job is always to talk truth to power, to try and say, listen, I hear you. I absolutely positively understand why you're afraid and what you think might happen. Let me try and help you understand from my perspective, for doing this for 20 years, the very best tools I have available to help you and your family recover, because you're going to recover as a family. And for my money, if we can pull your son out of college, well, he got kicked out, so we already got that piece taken care of. We're going to get him out of jail this morning. We're going to take him directly from jail. We're going to put him in a place where he can get detoxed, assessed, and stabilized, and then we're going to move him to sober living. And I know what you want is you think, no, we don't have to do that. There's no reason to pay for that. He can come home. We have a spare room in the basement. We can take care of him. His dad understands these kinds of things. His sister can help. He'll be fine at home. And I'm like, there's just no way in the whole world that I'm going to sign off on that. There's no way in the whole world. I'm not letting him go back to college right away, and thankfully the dean isn't either. B, going home is just as bad. And Mom, I know that you love him and you have every intention of doing the right thing for him, but today, you cutting his peanut butter and jelly sandwich into little tiny triangles and you doing his laundry and you signing off on that kind of craziness isn't what he needs. He needs to take responsibility for his illness. He needs to grow up and learn and understand that he has a treatable long-term chronic illness, which it's incumbent upon him to manage. Not his mommy, not his daddy, not his sister, not anybody but him. So in the same way, if her son had diabetes, he would go to the hospital for a week and they would give him a long course during that week about what it's like to be diabetic, that it's a chronic illness, and that he, the individual suffering from the illness, is going to have to manage that illness ongoing for the rest of his life. Right? It's not up to Mom to prick his finger and check his blood or to figure out whether he needs a shot. It's his responsibility, right? In the exact same way, when you're diagnosed with a substance use disorder, it's the individual's responsibility to caretake their illness. And the best way to ensure that that begins to happen and that we inculcate that behavior is through sober living. It's not going to happen in Mom's basement. It's not going to happen at the frat house. It's not going to happen just going to see your therapist once a week. It's probably not even going to happen at outpatient. So there's lots of ways to talk about the different level of care. But when it comes to families and when they call and they're in crisis and they want to get their son or daughter better, when they want them to recover and they want to do so the most efficaciously, cleanly, easiest way possible, the most direct way, because the shortest distance between 2 points is a straight line. If you're asking me, we're going to get him into treatment, we're going to send him to sober living, and then we're going to come up with a long-term care plan about reintegrating life, going back to college. Because if it's the shortest distance between 2 points is a straight line, the line that parents are going to choose is you pick those 2 points and you draw a squiggly line 100 times, you circle back on itself, and you waste a lot of time and effort and money to get to the same place. So I'm a big fan of not wasting time, of not wasting effort, of not wasting money, and getting people recovered as quickly as I can. So here's the deal. Effectively, we get around 26,000 days on planet Earth, right? So when parents call me and they say, we have this crisis and we want to fix it, I'm like, I absolutely understand. I need you to understand that your son spent X amount of those 26,000 days being sick. And if it's up to me, I want to get him well as quickly as I can because I'm not willing to waste those days. So if I can curtail the number of days that he spends sick and buy him more days well, that's what I'm going to do. And if I have to be a little bit difficult and a little bit challenging, talk truth to power to parents to get that done, that's what I'm going to do. But from my vantage point, because here's the thing, in a world where there's sheep and sheepdogs and wolves, I'm a sheepdog, and my job is to go to war against the disease of addiction. And the disease wants more days. It wants to keep their son or daughter sick for more days. My job is to buy back and get as many days well as I can. And for my money, the best tool in my toolkit is sending their son or daughter to sober living for as long as I can. Because that is, simply put, the most efficacious tool we have today to help people get well.
Perfect. We're going to stop right there. Josh, please cut. And I am recording again. You're still recording. We are ready to go.
All right. So everybody always asks, how'd you get into this line of work? Or, how'd you build AIR? Where'd this all come from? You must be a counselor. Are you a doctor? And the answer is, I'm not a counselor. I'm not a doctor. I'm not any of those things. That I came by this honestly, maybe organically is the right word. So the backstory is this, is that I grew up in Washington, D.C., and I had a life that was going in that direction. And I got sick with this disease, right? I was chemically dependent. And I was good at college in terms of I was good at drinking beer and chasing girls. The problem was I didn't matriculate when I left college into regular life. And I think that's kind of a common story. And so things got worse, and I began to use drugs. I began to use more drugs. And so by the time I'm 25, here I am, this guy that's supposed to be going in one direction, wearing a suit and tie to a job in Washington, D.C., and he's going the other direction, and I'm an IV heroin addict in line at the methadone clinic. And I don't think that's where any parent wants to see their kid when they're 25. But that's where I ended up. And the good news is that I got there when I was 25. And the stories that break my heart are when people begin to get sober when they're 50 or 60. And I said every day I'm grateful that I crashed the bus soon. So the great thing was that my parents loved me enough to put me on a plane and send me to inpatient treatment. And inpatient treatment was great. I got detoxed, I got assessed, I got stabilized. What saved my bacon was that I went on to a halfway house for 4 months after I left treatment. And a halfway house is basically the old school version of sober living today. And at a halfway house, that's where I learned to grow up, right? That's where I learned to take responsibility and begin to recognize that what happened moving forward from here was up to me, and it was my own ticket to write. And as I made my way into recovery and I met people that were sober and had figured this thing out and had been sober for a long period of time and were willing to educate me, it really became clear that on some level I'd burned the bridge to my past behind me. What happened in front of me was entirely up to me. I could wear whatever clothes I wanted. I could have any kind of job I wanted. And as long as my moral compass was pointed clearly and I had my own set of internal values that I wasn't willing to betray, that I could do anything with the time given to me in front of me. So here's the deal. My experience running this company, talking on the phone to families, they're like, why should we listen to you? How do you know what's right? How do you know what's wrong? We heard this other thing. I'm like, you can listen to whoever you want, but I can tell you that it's my experience. I've walked every step of the way that I'm asking your son to walk. And I've also been sober for 20 years. So I know what it's like on the other side. And I've also watched 20 years worth of families do the right things and 20 years worth of families doing the wrong things. When I think about what recovery is really about, and you hear this all the time. People are like, I'm afraid that it's going to be super boring. I don't want to spend my life in church basements. I don't really relate to those people. I get it. I get that there's a lot of mythology out there about what being sober is like and what recovery is like. My experience, however, is entirely different. My experience is that when I got sober, my life began. And if I had it to do over again, if I get to rewrite the history a little bit, I would have gotten sober when I was 17. I want to go to college sober. I would have loved to have been in college sober and been able to like chase girls and go to classes and travel and do stuff with a clear mind and well-intentioned and be able to, execute on things that I actually wanted to do. But I didn't get that opportunity until I was 26. But from 26 till today, I'm 47. I gotta say, I have every minute that's been given to me, every opportunity that's been afforded to me, I like to think that I've taken advantage of. And anytime anybody wants to say, hey, I'm getting married in Ireland, do you want to come? The answer is yes, right? And it's not really a question of do I have the money or can I get the time off? It's that somebody's willing to give me an opportunity to experience life. I got married when I was 39, and the reason I married the person that I married was because this woman had come from a family that was solidly grounded. She had parents that were still married. She had two sisters that she knew and loved, which wasn't my experience growing up. So I was smart enough to recognize that if I'm going to have a family, I should do it with someone that knows how to do it. So I had the opportunity to get married. I got two great kids. I got the opportunity to be a part of their families and be the dad that I want to be, right? Not the dad that I have to be based upon other people's expectations or what other people think that I should be like. Being able to choose my own destiny, my family's destiny, my kids' destiny, decide what I want to do on a daily basis, as long as I'm true to my core values, has allowed me to travel the world, laugh, have friends, do amazing and unbelievable things. And see, that's the story that never gets told. And so when families call and they're in crisis, I quickly try and move them out of crisis and say, listen, I get where you are. I absolutely understand that. But what I have is I sort of have the bird's eye view of what's going to happen. I can see where you are now, and I can see where you guys are going to be in 5 years, and great things are going to happen. I believe in great things for your son and daughter. If you pay attention to what I'm going to tell you, and you follow direction, and you do the steps that I'm going to lay out for you in the order that I lay them out, I guarantee you that great things will happen for your son or daughter and your family. Only because that's my experience. I know that if you're baking cookies and you put the right amount of eggs in and the right amount of sugar and you bake at 325 for the right amount of minutes, you're going to get delicious chocolate chip cookies. And there's exactly that kind of recipe for recovery. It's a well-trodden path. And every time you hear about, well, I heard that X amount of people get well and X amount of people stay sick, the reality is that 100% of the people that want to get well, get well. This is a disease that you can recover from. So if you went to the cancer ward today and you talk to those folks, and X amount of percentage of those people, no matter what the great medications available, are not going to recover, right? They're not going to get well from those types of cancer. But that's not true for the folks that are in inpatient treatment today. 100% of those people can recover and be in remission 5, 10, 20 years from now, and all they have to do is follow the directions, the continuing care plan that's given to them. So that's my job, is how can I make them do that work? And part of that is that I need to make them believe in the possibility of possibility. They need to understand that recovery is entirely possible and that recovery isn't going to suck, right? It's not a terrible burden. It's not a life that's filmed in black and white. They only have the perspective they have, which is that things are terrible now, and they don't know that things are about to get much, much better.
Cut.